We can't fully appreciate what it means to be human unless we come to terms with our dark side. Are we fundamentally good, bad, or something in between? This question will lead us to consider the nature of evil and think about what, if anything, makes someone evil. As the course draws to a close, we'll think about how we might best respond to the dark side of human nature. Should we blame those who would harm us? Should we retaliate against them in anger? Or should we perhaps even forgive the worst of evils? The dark side of human nature is about more than evil, immorality, and sin. It's also about the human condition, about the essential and often unpleasant facts of our existence in this world. People tend not to want to know about their dark thoughts. Unwanted and intrusive thoughts seem different from thoughts and desires we acknowledge as our own. We might explain this by distinguishing between those thoughts and desires that represent our real self and those that don't. Now, this video is inspired by Slip's video of the portrayal of apathy. Make sure you guys go check out this amazing video. KiiNGKhyy was a shy and reserved person who just enjoyed reading and hanging out with his only friend Hye. He was very gentle and optimistic and would never hurt anyone. However, beneath his altruistic and gentle nature was an underlying fear of being alone that was aggravated by his mother's death. He despised the idea of solitude, hence he tried to protect those dear to him so he would not have to face his fear of being alone in the world. This was perhaps his greatest weakness. Since KiiNGKhyy was always trying to protect others, he was essentially trying to protect himself from ever being alone again. Therefore, to escape that scenario, he would shoulder the task of protecting others onto himself without relying on anyone else. This is also why KiiNGKhyy rejected the notion of living, because watching others die reminded him of those lonely days without anyone beside him. After he was turned into a half-ghoul, he clung to his human side. To keep living in the human world, he began to work at KiiNGKhyy and establish relationships with the ghouls there. He started to develop an interest in becoming stronger and began reading martial art books so he could protect those closest to him. However, he was still troubled with the fact that he was a half-ghoul and wanted to search for a place where he could belong. As much as he treasured his life, if people close to him were threatened, he would not hesitate to put his life on the line. After being held captive and undergoing intense torture at the hands of Yamuri, KiiNGKHY's personality changed drastically. He trashed his previous ideology of being hurt rather than hurting others, pledging to crush those who dared threaten his place of belonging. He no longer feared his ghoul side and was more violent during battles. By embracing his ghoul nature wholeheartedly, KiiNGKhyy gave up on being human. KiiNGKHY's mental state undergoes extreme changes over the course of the series. He starts to have these mental conversations within himself and starts to truly bear the weight of sins that he has caused. This darkness had taken over KiiNGKhyy as he no longer had an attachment to a human. The loneliness followed KiiNGKhyy and sent him into darkness, a place where he had to accept himself and try to rely on himself more than ever to protect people. We see his thoughts tend to get to him many times over and over, and he doesn't know what to do. He has so many versions to himself that he always clung to and did not know right and wrong anymore. He is a character who suffered so much and yet continued with it all to become something bigger. KiiNGKhyy was someone who wanted to help others survive but never fully clung on to his own life. He reaches this darkness and eventually comes to accept all sides of himself. He did not understand his real self at all, from his abuse as a kid from his mother to being turned into a ghoul. Everything about him was a tragedy and his darkness was truly one of a kind. Meliodas was a sin of wrath but was a very calm person. He can be known to show some rage and didn't try to kill anyone. However, his personality was once filled with darkness and was terrifying. He was known as the most terrifying demon in existence, and no other demon would dare challenge Meliodas when he was the leader of the 10 Commandments and heir to the throne. Meliodas was the leader of the 10 Commandments and had the commandment of love. He eventually betrays the demon clan because of his love for Elizabeth. In doing so, he is killed by the Demon King and is cursed with immortality as his punishment, reviving him every time he dies in exchange for his emotions being consumed, until he returns to be the bloodthirsty demon he once was. His lover Elizabeth was cursed with perpetual reincarnation, forcing her to live human lives in which she would always reunite with Meliodas and die right before his eyes, over and over again. Meliodas had to deal with this emotional pain for many years as he watched Elizabeth die over 106 times. That is a lot of times seeing your love die right before your eyes. He wants nothing more than to lift his curse and perish where he can live in the afterlife with Elizabeth and be reunited once again. We see Meliodas revert back to his old demon self where he is just an unstoppable force filled with darkness. He knows the pain of not being able to save everyone and bearing the sins that he has caused. The power of darkness stays within Meliodas as we see him try to face these internal problems as a constant clash of light and darkness. He knows that if one is off balance, then chaos surely follows. He is able to confront his father and defeat him and knows that the cycle of light and darkness is never ending. He is able to walk into light as a new peaceful age for himself and take over the darkness that once consumed him. Mikey from Tokyo Revengers was the founding member of the Tokyo Manji game. Mikey is usually a carefree teenager who loves to joke and play pranks around those he considers his close friends. He cares for them greatly and is determined to protect their honor. He rarely shows any sign of weakness, as he believes himself to be the foundation and support for Toman, and if the pillar himself were to display weakness, Toman would also be weakened. With Mikey, there exists a great darkness. He is forced to carry the burdens of a troubling past, teetering between treading the right path and succumbing to that darkness. He usually hides this with his carefree grin. Without the right people to guide him, he becomes corrupted, turning into one of the most heinous criminals in the present. It is a large mission of Takemichi to make sure Mikey never veers off the right path ever again. Even in instances where Mikey succumbs to that darkness, there are conflicting aspects of his personality and contradicting behavior. He's seen to be attracted to and seeking to embrace a life of violence, committing multiple atrocities or otherwise enabling his enforcers to carry them out without any apparent sign of emotional response, acting with indifference and a cold poker face, being even capable of hurting or even gunning down dear friends of his. At the same time, he tries to distance himself from his friends, likely knowing he won't be able to control his impulses, trying to separate himself from taking central command of his crew, and even going as far as attempting suicide as a means to seek both solace and a way to put an end to the chaos he helps create. The central catalyst for this darkness is loss. As Mikey's loved ones either suffer or die, it affects Mikey on a very personal level, to the point he later claims their souls guide him, much to the surprise and worry of everyone present who question his statements. Along with the increasing body count, Mikey's mental and emotional state deteriorates accordingly. Although he's still capable of acting composed and normal, the effects of this growing darkness become more apparent even to Mikey himself. It is a result of this loss that renders Mikey vulnerable to manipulation and subsequently degrades his moral compass. In fact, in every timeline with a dark future, the cornerstone was triggered through the death of those closest to Mikey, which allowed third parties to fill the void in his heart with evil. However, it was revealed that the darkness was a result of his older brother, Shinichiro, who acquired the ability of the time leap to save Mikey from an accident, which resulted in his death. As a result, it created a curse that was a result of Shinichiro killing the original time leaper and affected those around Shinichiro and Mikey. Believing he couldn't contain his darkness any further, he distanced himself so he could prevent them from dying because of the curse. However, after he and Takemichi both time leaped into the distant past, the curse has ceased to exist and Mikey is finally free from his violent impulses. Sasuke Uchiha from Naruto is one of the best well-written characters ever. He was a happy child and wanted to be worthy of his clan name. He had a great relationship with his brother Itachi until his brother kills off the Uchiha clan and telling Sasuke that he never loved him. Sasuke was crushed by the loss of his family and then devotes years of his life to avenge his family by killing Itachi. With his new outlook, he became cold towards others, unmoved by and uninterested in what they do or think of him, choosing instead to keep to himself. In his pursuit for the power to take his revenge, whenever he meets new people, he makes an evaluation of their abilities. Those he perceives to be weaker than himself, he arrogantly disregards, giving them little attention so that they won't hold him back. Those he perceives as stronger, he fixates over and tries to surpass. Sasuke decides to sever all ties to his village in a single-minded pursuit of power, leaving Konoha to focus solely on himself. Sasuke eventually finds out his brother did love him and now has a deep hatred for Konoha, and his fall to darkness was only inevitable. He ends up mercilessly destroying anyone who stands in his way, and the good in him is almost completely gone. Sasuke was trying to carry the entire Uchiha's hate on his shoulder, burdening the darkness they all felt. Sasuke eventually comes to terms with himself as seeing Itachi once again and chooses to die so that the curse of hatred dies along with him, but Naruto convinces him to stay as he eventually lives to find redemption instead. Sasuke becomes more wise and mature and comes to be a great person after all. His redemption story is breathtaking and something that everyone should come to know. Shin'ei Nozen is the leader of the Spearhead Squadron in the Anime 86. He felt it was his responsibility to shoulder the deaths of his comrades and let them pass peacefully. He was always the last person to be left alive, carrying his fallen comrades with him. This loneliness got to him as he felt like there was no reason for him to still be alive. He had an ability that allowed him to hear the voices of the enemy legion, and it put a huge mental strain on him. He develops this very stoic nature and rarely ever talks. He's a very selfless person and has a lack of care for himself. The darkness in Shin was grown since he was little. A child who was thrown into the pits of fire as an 86 and had to fight to survive. He was always the lonely man on the journey, who was always the last one left. Darkness overcame Shin as he starts getting more irrational and going on these tough challenges by himself to be able to die in battle. He has no care to life and doesn't want to be the person to hold the burdens of his fallen comrades. Shin carried the burden of being the strongest. He's always left alone. Always being left alone is terrifying, and there's nothing more scary than that. Shin was known as the Reaper, someone who was compared to as a plague that brought death to everyone around them. No one ever survived long-term in the squadron with Shin until he meets Raiden. Shin eventually decides to live on and confront his darkness with his friends. Darkness was formed a lot inside for these characters, and I think it caused us to like them even more. A common theme within the darkness of these characters was loneliness and the burdens placed upon themselves. Those can be extremely devastating and cause pain in different ways. These characters all experienced pain and had to discover their own dark side. Within that darkness, these characters were all able to eventually find the light within themselves, and it is important to have both. Knowing your dark side and intrusive thoughts can be as great as you acknowledge the good and bad within you. You can be led astray, but it's what you do once you get back up from falling. The pits of darkness will come find us all, and you have to prepare for what comes next to be able to resolve your adversity. The toughest battles will always come, and that's why you take it head on and fight within yourself. The darkness of characters is something we see a lot, and it is expressed clearly on us with anime characters, whether that is through backstories or monumental events. We all have a dark side, qualities that we often don't like to reveal to others. It's the traits we might be ashamed of or embarrassed about, the ones others may have rejected or that we believe deem us undeserving or unworthy of love. You may sometimes act judgmental, angry, selfish, or controlling. You may not like these so-called negative traits about yourself, or you may have buried them so deep that you don't even realize they exist. But embracing these qualities actually opens the door to happiness, fulfillment, and true enlightenment. Our dark sides are a part of our experience. By uncovering and embracing our dark side, we can accept all parts of ourselves. Well, I thank you guys for watching the video. Please like, comment, subscribe, and I'll be back in the next one. Peace.